looking back on that first deployment it was pretty crazy because we had limited support. We would just we'd go do sniper overwatch ops from Baghdad and Fallujah, and we'd hop in a couple Humvees, no armor, no escort, like you're driving from Dallas to Fort Worth. We just hop in and go post up for a few days
That was
and
nuts.
drive back. It was nuts.
Battleline podcast, we have, I think, an extraordinary interview for you guys with Brent Gleeson, a guy I met quite a while back that we've been meaning to have on, and we're already up to episode 253, and it's about time we're having him on. So Brent Gleeson, Navy SEAL, served in Team 5, has some really amazing stories that you guys are not going to want to miss. Wherever you're listening, be sure to subscribe, leave a comment for us or a review. All of that stuff matters. Before we get into everything, though, with over 700 5-star customer reviews, Ned's Mellow Magnesium is an instant hit. One of their many great products. The product I've been taking every night before I go to sleep, actually, has been the Brain Blend. And for those who don't know, when we first started the podcast, I was personal training. I still get my recertification every 2 years. And oftentimes, even though I'm not training people, like the people that I was training are always asking about supplementation. And most supplements are really not anything that you need to be taking and are kind of a waste of your money. Ned stuff is in a whole nother category because I'd say the most important thing when it comes to supplementation is, are you getting a good night's sleep? And for me, CBD has really impacted that. When I'm exercising and taking CBD, I am lights out after I take that. And if you're not, you could write to us personally if it's not impacting you, because that stuff works miracles for me, man. I am out like a light, but I don't wake up the next morning groggy and all that. I wake up refreshed, and especially with the Brain Blend, because it's got that ginseng, ginkgo biloba leaf, the lion's mane. Like, I wake up alert and refreshed and ready to do my tasks for the day. So check that out. Check out Mellow Magnesium. Check out the Daily Balm, the Relief Balm. That stuff.
The pain relief balm. That's my thing, man.
Stuff.
Pain relief balm's awesome. Yeah.
You're probably needing a lot of that right now.
Yeah, right now with my new hip, but it works wonders. It does definitely help with recovery. 100%.
I love that stuff. So check out all of it when you go to helloned.com/battleline or add the code battleline at checkout, and you'll get a great discount just for being a listener of the podcast. If you've been listening for 253 freaking episodes now and you have not, checked out Ned by now, I do not know what you're waiting for. So do it now. It's HELLONED.com/battleline. With that, we got some news to cover and then Brent Gleeson. So let's hit it.
From Kansas City to New York City, from planet Earth to extraterrestrial life in space, a podcast with no equal, engaged in unconventional warfare through your speakers and headphones. This is a show about embracing the suck, conquering your demons, and finding God in the face of adversity. Chris Tonto Peranto.
Switch is on. Motherfucker, I'm gonna shoot you in the face.
Ian Scotto.
Ian and I have been dating for a long time.
You are now tuned into the Battle Line Podcast.
The Switch is on, Battleline podcast. We used to, in the early days of this podcast, 2019, 2020, we did a lot of long, drawn-out intros, and we've kind of skipped that most of the time and get right into the interviews because that's what you guys like to hear. But oftentimes there is news that we feel obligated to cover. Sometimes it's good news, and sometimes it's not so good news. This is unfortunately one of those times that you alerted me to earlier this morning, that a guy we had on the podcast back on episode 135, a great friend of yours, and that is Robert W. Allen, call sign Spanky, has just passed away. And the quip of him talking about Ambassador Stevens protecting Ambassador Stevens is still one of our biggest on YouTube. If you guys go back and you look up just by views, our biggest clips, that's up there. Great interview with him. Totally memorable for me. I remember that interview entirely. So for those who don't know, U.S. Army officer, State Department security advisor, also a security contractor. He did a lot, man. Many years of service. Also college professor, right? If I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
he was.
Yeah.
In Louisiana. I believe he was going for his lieutenant colonel. He did make major, and
At
yeah,
Tulane.
at Tulane, exactly. And no, just a great friend, all that. But he was, and I don't have a lot of great friends that I can actually trust. I have friends, but there are certain friends that I can trust and I can count them on one hand, and he was one of them. So yeah, and for me it was unexpected. I mean, I just talked to him 2 months early, just 2 months ago about yeah, about 2.5 months ago about doing a speaking event, going to Tulane and doing something for him and for his troops. And he didn't say anything was wrong, but that was the kind of guy Spanky was. He wouldn't say if he was sick or hurting. Him and I, when we worked at Blackwater, he was one of my instructors. I ran the OGA program, the CIA instructor program, and he came in, and he came into myself and a SEAL by the name of Mike Haynes, who, if I can track him down, would love to have Sawbones on the show, who I believe was SEAL Team 8. And this guy comes in and he's just some army guy and he wants to come instruct for us. And I remember Randy Leonard said, make sure this guy's going to come help you. And we're like, we don't want him. Like, who the fuck is this guy, dude? He comes in and I remember, I did vet the instructors pretty tough, and Mike was in great shape, former SEAL, so no issues. So when guys came in, we'd put them through their own instructor PT test, and we crushed him. I mean, we did it all with him, but we made him come to our standard. And I remember him puking his guts out, and he made it the whole way. And that was like, well, this is the guy. This is who he's going to run the AOB program for us, the Army of Blackwater, the static program for us. And every day it was just motivating to see him because he really cared about what he did. And he pushed himself to the limit. That first day, just watching somebody puke by pushing themselves physically, to me, is amazing still this day. See somebody go that route. But then and over time, like I said, he did become a great friend, and he was a tremendous instructor, and he was a tremendous officer, and he was just a tremendous person. So yeah, it's hard. It seems like I'm losing a friend every month now. You get to that age, but this one, it was unexpected to me. I
Yeah.
didn't know, and he never let on that he was sick to any. You see people on social media. I have friends, and hey, it's okay if that's the way you heal. It's doing that way that I'm sick. I'm not doing well. Shit, I post stuff on me when I'm getting out of surgery. Come on, sometimes that's therapeutic, but you didn't go look at. You'll see nothing on there that he was sick, and
And
I don't
he
know if it,
truthfully, I mean, if you because I haven't looked at his account or anything probably in a long time, and I tagged him in the thing, but he wasn't a social media guy. I think he
no, he
posted maybe
wasn't.
once or twice a year. That was it.
He wasn't, and but it to me, I guess I'm speechless a little bit because it was unexpected,
Yeah.
um, and it was cancer, and I don't know, guys. People in the if it was burn pit related or not, I have no idea. I didn't want to ask those questions. If that comes out, it'll come out later by his family. That's for them to know. But all I know is though is that he was a wonderful, wonderful friend. He pushed himself past his body's capabilities. I saw him do that personally. I pushed him through that, and saw him come out with flying colors. And he always wanted to be the best person, the best instructor, the best operator he could be. And he would put the extra time into it to do it. So, yeah, I'm gonna miss him, man. I'm gonna miss him, like I told you in the text, just like I missed Drew. He was that kind of a friend that I
And for
maybe
the audience, Drew Dwyer.
Drew
Yeah.
Drew Dwyer, some guy maybe not talked to for 2 years, but then we see each other, and it's like we saw each other yesterday. So,
Yeah.
man, God bless, brother, and my father will greet you up in heaven, and I'm sure Ron and Bub will have a drink with you up there, and to his family, my prayers to you, and just know that he's at peace now, and he was and is a remarkable human being. So I hope that gives some closure to them.
Yeah, for those who don't who never heard the interview, I definitely would say go back and check it out. It was episode 135. The clip of him talking about Ambassador Stevens is the big one. And it truly, man, it's never lost on me that it's like I'm so privileged to be able to do this and interview these guys and kind of archive their story, especially a guy like that, because there's not really, I don't know if there's any other interviews up with
No,
him, you
no.
know? So it's that's his archive of his story, you know? It's like when we had Pablo Schreiber on and he talked about the importance of interviewing his dad before he passed away. Like
Yeah.
it's awesome that the people who know him will be able to forever look that up on YouTube
Yeah.
and be able to hear his voice
And
and be
and
able to hear
remember
what he did.
and remember him, and it was a great interview. It was,
Yeah.
and that was Spanky joking and being serious and giving me shit back because he earned that right to give me shit back by putting up with my shit for an entire year and then off and on for another 5 years whenever we were at Blackwater together. Yeah, just a special person, and they don't make a lot of people like Robert Allen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad that it's archived. If they don't, at least nobody that I am. So I'll be able to at least hear his voice every once in a while. Just like where I say voicemails from my father, I'll at least get to hear that voice, even if it's just for 5 seconds and
Sure.
smile. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think back on the interviews we did, guys like Vincent Speranza that we
Yeah.
probably got to do, I believe, like the last interview
Last
of his
interview.
life.
Yeah.
And I feel so honored that I get to do this. Actually in booking guests, I reached out to Sammy Steigman, who's a Holocaust survivor who's still with us, living in New York. And he wrote me back and he like immediately. And then I called, he was like, I want you to call me. And so he can't come on next month, but he's going to come on in October in
That's cool.
studio. And I'm
That's
like,
cool.
how cool is that we get to interview
Whoa.
people like this?
He's coming to studio?
Yeah, he's going to do it in studio. He was like,
Wow.
as long as you could pay for like my Uber, I'm
Yeah,
doing.
yeah, yeah,
So I'm going
yeah,
to
of
bring him like to the
course.
team house. Yeah, I want to meet him in person. And it was really funny because I had a long conversation with him, a really cool guy, and I could tell you all different things. But like the one thing he said, he's like, even stuff not related to the Holocaust. He's like, ask me whatever you want. He's like, I will answer anything as honestly as I can. He doesn't really know the show, but he goes, but don't expect me to be politically correct because I'm not going to be. And I was like, it's perfect.
Did you say, do you know who my partner is? It's like, that's no problem. Join the club.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
no,
gonna
and
be awesome.
specifically he was like, man, that'd be awesome to come on with a Benghazi survivor. So
No way.
I
Are you
love that.
pulling my leg?
No,
Are you fucking
100%, man. So
Wow.
I love that we get to do this and we get to interview so many awesome people and people who've passed away, unfortunately, with Robert Allen being added to that
And
list
people
now.
that's why I'll be quite honest when he and I this is why we did this. It was I know we've had some we're getting we have big names on here, but we did it so and at least for me it was let's get people on that I know have amazing stories that you have never heard of
Yeah.
because they're amazing people. They're more amazing. I just happen to be in a situation that became hugely political, huge microscope was on it. But there's these people out of the den like Robert, who's just an amazing person that you will never hear of, and no other shows are going to have him. But I want him because I
Yeah.
know him, and I know how awesome he is, and I know that he served his country and did it honorably, and I know that he's a badass, and so I love that we get to do our show that way. Where I love having, and Rob is a friend, O'Neill. I love having
Yeah.
Pablo on. I
Or
love
Jack
having
Carr.
our
Sure.
Jack Carr. I love having I love having
Corey
when we
Taylor
had
from Slipknot,
Corey
if we're going high
Taylor
profile.
and we're name dropping here. I
Yeah.
do, but I really do love having people that I know and I know their stories and I know that people should hear them. Whether you're going to love them, but you should hear them because you won't hear them anywhere else. And then when guys like Robert passes, well, now there's some memory of them that
Yeah.
I believe should even be greater, but at least it's here and we've got them. And
Yeah.
so
The other guy I'm forgetting, sorry, was
no.
that we lost since doing the show, and you and I didn't really know him. We just had him on for an interview. John Bartolo, he passed away. So this
Yeah.
is really the third guy that we've
Wow.
had on who we've lost since doing the show.
That's and as I get older and the guys I serve with as we get older, we'll probably have more. That's life, that's aging. But at least there's a positive outcome, and that's that their memories will always be here visually and what's
Audibly.
Audibly. There you go. I guess so. But they will always be here, and maybe on a self side for me, at least I get to see them. But
Yeah.
I hope you guys get to see them and they become even just friends via YouTube and via the podcast. But you get to know them, maybe feel something close to them, even though you may not know them personally. You get to know their story. So
Yeah,
brother.
fully agree with all that. The other piece of news I wanted to cover, in the ongoing saga of disgraced Congressman George Santos is pleading guilty to wire fraud and identity theft. And I did watch the video of him outside the courthouse, bawling and crying about it.
Pleading guilty is a step I never imagined I'd take, but it is a necessary one because it is the right thing to do. It's not only a recognition of my misrepresentations to others, but more profoundly, it is my own recognition of the lies I told myself over these past years. It is a confirmation with these truths that have flooded me with deep regret for the choices I made. I'm taking responsibility because I have to. Truth and integrity. I know that rebuilding trust will take time and that my actions will always be a part of my history. However, I am determined to use this experience as a turning point in my life, one that will guide me to make better choices and to be an exemplary member of my community. Thank you, guys.
And I don't feel any sympathy.
Was that for the vet?
Man.
That was that the vet where it took money from the veterans, or was that
He
something?
did a lot of things, man. Well, he's not being sentenced for that because that was before he was a congressman when he was going under a fake identity, though. He was going as Anthony DeVolder. So Richard Ostoff, when he was going by the name Anthony DeVolder, stole money from the charity that was supposed to help his service dog. And every now and again, I do get a text from Richard, who's a great guy. And he follows all this stuff closely, man. And I think he's probably very excited to see that there is going to be some accountability. There was accountability with him getting kicked out of Congress, but now I'm thinking he probably will do jail time. We'll see. Whenever he does get sentenced, whatever it is, I'd actually love to have Richard Ostoff back on the show.
Yeah.
And
I would.
even though she's very far left journalist, I'd love to have Jacqueline Sweet on the show because she's a fellow Long Islander and she'd come in studio. And because she's the one who took down Santos. And I'm glad she exposed all that he did because we can't have people like that representing us. So, yeah, I don't feel any sympathy when I go watch this guy crying outside the courthouse. He should have had sympathy many years ago when he did all this. I do hope he learns a lesson, of course. But I mean, there is no sympathy to be had for this guy. This guy was stealing money from his donors. This guy was doing all sorts of crap. He wasn't doing anything ethical. His whole identity was fake. His whole backstory was fake. And yeah, so I was actually glad to see that. You know what? I wanted to mention two other deaths really quick, though. I've been reading Jack Russell from Great White's book, which has been tremendous. And as I was reading, I was like, man, this would be a great guy to have on the show because it's not just the typical Sunset Strip story. His dad was a veteran. He also was a guy who was in tons of trouble with the law prior to being, in one of these bands who blew up. And then I hear he died, as I'm reading his book. So we'll never be able to get him on the podcast.
Jack Russell?
Jack
From
Russell
White,
of
the
Great
lead?
White.
No
Yeah,
shit.
just
I didn't
passed
know
away.
Wow.
And you know who else I wanted to mention that I just saw? Phil Donahue passed away. And I still watch some of those videos on YouTube, man. When I think of like what we do and being able to have interviews with some outrageous people sometimes, like he did, he really set the standard for that stuff. I know it's like slightly before my time, but I still watch some of those on YouTube.
That was my time. And that was when they were still kind of classy, before the Jerry Springer, where you could put somebody on a mic on blast, but he could do it in a classy way where he didn't just make
it wasn't as outrageous as Jerry Springer.
And you're right.
But there was some outrageous there. I feel like every now and again he would have like, he'd have high profile people, but then he'd bring on like the Klan, but he would do it before those days where it was like, why would you platform these people? I think he was one of those guys just like, man, I want to hear what people have to say. I don't care if I hate them or love them. And I do miss those days, man. There were times you could turn on the TV and you could see, truthfully, someone like Louis Farrakhan or David Duke, and I'd be like, I kind of want to hear what they have to say. I'm probably going to hate it, but whatever. And these days, it's just like, you can't platform this person. Yeah. Well, why not? even just us having Alex Jones on, friends of mine, why would you platform him? Why not? He's an interesting guy,
Yeah, he is. He's got story. It's kind of silly, but we will continue to do that, even though most of our guests are right wing and they're conservative, but
Not
we
always though.
like I said, I'm just trying to be fair. Most of
Yeah.
them, but no, of course we get center and we get one or two left, but that's just I mean, that's who I know. It's not that we choose that. And hey, if any crazy left crazy left, hey, come on, man.
Yeah, when
Well,
like I said, when George Santos, whenever his sentencing is handed down, we'll have Jacqueline Sweet on. I think she'd be cool to have on.
you're right, man. It is that you're everybody's getting in their own little box, their own little, and their echo chambers now,
Yeah.
and it's gone that route, and me doing still some podcasts, and yeah, I know I'll be on Sean Ryan's show here in a few
Yeah, yeah, I'm
weeks. It's
excited for that.
Yeah, it's still, and I just happen to be speaking in Nashville, and I'll be there. I'll stay and do it while I'm there.
You got to tell people to
But
tune into Battle Line
oh,
podcasts,
oh,
man.
but believe me, we will. I will. I know. Battle Line Tactical, Battle Line Podcast, real time. Come on, man, and bring him some stuff. But it is even there. That's an echo chamber for pretty much my politics. So that's what I'm trying to get at. Nothing against Sean. No, I think Sean does a great job. Obviously, he's got a great following. He's doing a great job. But it is an echo chamber, and even when I have tried in the past to be I wanted to be on Anderson Cooper's show when 13 Hours came out. But when we went and did a Bill O'Reilly show, Anderson Cooper seen it. So, you're not coming on our show. Okay, sorry, I didn't know there. So don't even say that it's a right. It's a right wing. It's both. And even with me, even offering at times, I'll come on your show. Once I did somebody else's show that was completely the polar opposite. It was, well, nope, you can't come on our show anymore. So
Yeah, I
this is
like
what it is.
I like talking to everybody, and
I
that's
know.
actually it's a good way to bring that up because Richard Osthoff, I've said this on the show before. We were like the only show that would be considered center right that had him on.
That's
It was only
crazy.
left-wing media who
That's
had him on
fucking
because it was taking down a Republican congressman.
that's fucking
I don't
crazy.
care.
Yeah.
I want to interview and I want to call out corruption of anyone, especially if they fucked over a veteran. I want to have them
Exactly.
on the show. But yet, Fox News, Newsmax, they didn't have on Richard Osthoff
Why wouldn't and it just makes no sense to me.
because
Why
they didn't want
wouldn't you?
George Santos to be taken down. They
And
wanted the
and
Republicans to keep the majority.
and that's just let's have integrity and ethics. Are we beyond that now? Are we just so far
Yes.
gone that yeah, that's
Most
the
of the
thing.
country is, yes.
That's a rhetorical question. Well, we'll do our best to keep it here and as best we can, even on me with my outspokenness. Sometimes I try to I have integrity and ethics. I do. I just sometimes go off the rails and people don't like me going off the rails and calling their shit out. But hopefully here we continue to keep that, and I know you do, brother. You always have. So, and we keep getting people that are both sides of the aisle or stories that maybe our main viewership doesn't agree with, but it's an important story to have on there. And,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we'll keep going that route. We'll do our best, guys. We'll keep doing it. And once we stop doing that, then we need to get the show off the air, which that is not going to happen for a long time because I actually now, and I'm glad Ian's. In the beginning, I may not have enjoyed the show as much doing it. I'm having a blast doing it now, so I want
Thanks,
to
man.
make
Yeah,
sure
me too.
we keep, yeah, keep
Yeah,
going.
and speaking of which, we had a blast having on Brent Gleeson.
Yeah, he's
I don't
awesome.
want
That
to
motherfucker, great guy,
Yeah.
man.
I don't want to
Man,
take up any more time with this intro because I know you guys are going to want to hear that. So let's get right to it. Before we do, though, Fort Scott Munitions sponsors every show. We say it all the time. We only work with sponsors that we truly stand
yeah.
behind. More than anything, this is ammo that you shoot with, I would say, pretty much every day, unless you're going
Yeah.
through surgery and you can't shoot. Other than that, you're at the range every day shooting Fort Scott.
And I just did a private class. I do private classes as well. Just reach out for Dakin Heating and Air. They brought a couple of their execs down and then a group of them down. And that's this weekend. I was hobbling out the range, but we're out there shooting and training. And that's all we use. Fort Scott Munitions. We use the range ammo and we use some double on impact. And it's still the best out there, guys. And the range ammo, great price for top notch ammo. So, and it's all lead free. A lot of ranges are requiring that lead free now ammo. So, go to Fort Scott Munitions, grab their ammo. You're not going to be disappointed. And then all their other merch on there is awesome as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you'll find it in all 50 states if you go to the
Yeah.
dealer locator, but the best way really is to go to their website because you'll get 15% off through us. I have seen not 15% off everything, but off ammo and off certain other things, you'll get
Huge.
15% off through us. And then if you throw other stuff in your cart, you could do that as well. But it's
Yeah.
fsm.com. Use the promo code BattleLine. They have so much available on there. It is the best site for ammo, fsm.com. Promo code BattleLine for 15% off. As always, they've been a great supporter of Chris Peranto, Battleline Tactical, and the podcast. And with that, let's get right over to Brent Gleeson. So joining us for the first time on Battleline Podcast is Brent Gleeson, a guy I met, I'm thinking probably like 7 years ago in person. Navy SEAL, served in SEAL Team 5 from 2000 to
Yeah.
'05. People know him from the cast of Stars Earn Stripes on NBC, the author of Taking Point and Embrace the Suck, public speaker, entrepreneur, CEO and founder of Accelerate. And yeah, you're like a jack of all trades. It's good to
Yeah.
finally have you on, man. We've been meaning to do this probably way early on, and now we're on episode 253, and we're finally doing
Amazing.
it.
Yeah, and I've been tracking you guys. It's awesome to see the growth of the pod and all the success you guys have had. But also just an honor to spend some time with you guys. And Chris, great to finally meet you.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
guess
it
kind of in
is.
person. So
Yeah, kind of in person. I know our past and people that we've served with. You were
yeah,
five. You were five.
yeah. So
Did you?
Glenn and those guys are
Yeah.
teammates of mine.
I
Yeah.
was so I was wondering. I was wondering if Glenn or Jack Silva, the
Yep.
real Jack Silva, because that
Yeah, all
was
those guys were
yeah,
were at five. It's they were there a little bit. Glenn was just I think a couple classes ahead of me in buds, but all those
yeah.
guys were at the team when I checked in, so they've been there at least a platoon before me. But
Well, a lot of our listeners, of course, they follow Benghazi. They follow
yep,
Bub, and I mean, they probably know the name Ronan Bub better than they know Tonto Tig. I mean, they did. Which is awesome. I love it. I love that they
yeah.
keep their memories alive. But brother, if you got any stories from the teams, whether Jack Ashery are the best. That's our listeners, man. But anything, especially from Jack Silva, because a lot of people they don't believe that Jack exists. And I am respectful to Jack and his
Yep.
wife. They're wonderful people. Jack really was. I thought Krasinski played him as far as what he was like when we were GRS.
Yeah.
I don't know how he was like on the teams, which is why I want to ask you. But he really was like the adult in the room. He
He was the mature one.
he
Good.
was the mature one. But out of respect, we've never revealed, we never will until Jack wants to do it himself. And if he does it, great. If he does, but no big deal. But if you have anything, and again, if we say anything, we'll edit it out, brother. If we
Yeah,
got
no,
it.
we were in different troops, so I mean, didn't really interact with him that much. But you know how it is. I mean, we're just even in
Yeah,
different platoons, different troops. We're on totally different training cycles
yeah,
and
yeah,
different
yeah, yeah.
deployments and things like that. So some of those guys I didn't get to spend, actually, frankly, a lot of time with. But when I read the book and then obviously the movie came out, it was it strikes a nerve when the only the couple dudes that we lost were former teammates. So.
We're team guys, yeah.
So
And they were actually, and you're right on that, man. I mean, if they aren't in the platoon, people think, hey, guy was at Second Ranger. Did you know him? Well, where was he at? He was in he was in Charlie Company. Well, probably, or even another platoon. Probably
Yeah.
not. It's
When I've had a lot of buddies too transition out and did you do the GRS thing and lost some dudes doing
Sure.
that as well. So, but
And
anyways, we'll dig into some of that stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah, you know what I'm wondering, and we'll get into your whole background, but because so many of the people I know were SEAL Team 3, or I see it like Brandon Webb and all that, and SEAL Team 6, of course, we've had Rob O'Neill on the show. Like of public figures people may know, like I know David Goggins did the intro to your book, so I don't know the relationship there, but like who from SEAL Team 5 may people in this audience be like, I know that guy.
besides
Well,
Brent,
I mean,
besides
Dave,
yourself. Besides yourself.
Well, but yeah, first of all, I thought this was about me, but yeah, let's talk about the other guys. Jeez, dude, just right off the bat, they can't even spend any time talking about me. Fine, whatever. No, you know what? It happens all the time. It's fine. People are like, oh my God, that was cool. Do you know David Goggins? Do you know Chaco? I'm like, oh, Jesus. Anyways, I should be in their shadow. It's my course. It's fine. No, but all jokes aside, and let me use this as an opportunity to dispel some of the myth around the David Goggins, whom I love as a friend, brother, and teammate. He as we know, he went through buds and was not successful in Hell Week at the first attempt.
Yeah.
Was not successful due to some injuries and some weaknesses and crying and really emotional weakness. Really, is what encapsulates him, I think, perfectly. And then he landed, long story short, he lands in my class, my boat crew, and then was successful. So you guys do the math. You're highly intelligent.
That's all
So
about you. That's your
basically,
leadership.
I take full credit for his success then and now. Actually, don't, let's cut that out. Just kidding. No, but David, I mean, for your audience, obviously notable folks. I mean, David obviously is is the tip of that spear. We both went to 5 together, but again, also once we got to Team 5, we were in different troops and different platoons. So totally different cycles. Like my task unit at 5, we were actually the first SEAL task unit in Iraq in April of 03. He and some other guys did a PACOM deployment during that time. But yeah, he's definitely spent a lot of time with him from day one of buds all the way through training for graduation to Team 5. And then after that first deployment cycle, he came back and got some crazy idea that he wanted to go to get some extra professional development and go to Ranger school. I was like, why the fuck do you want to go to Ranger school?
Dude, I wouldn't go unless I have to. We have
I know.
to.
I was like, no,
I don't.
thank you. No, thank you. And he went back. He went to Ranger school and came back a psycho. So I don't know what you guys do, brother, but
we snuggle, we spoon with each other way too much. We get way too close.
That's what it was, I guess. he came back like 35 pounds lighter and crazier than he was before. So there we go.
I just know the fact that if he did an intro for your book, he obviously thinks highly of you. Unlike, and this was the big controversy, unlike Dan Crenshaw, who refused to do an intro for his book. And I remember Chris and I went off in that whole thing, but that was the drama of the day at the time.
One thing I'm educating Ian on is that you don't get involved in inter-unit scuffles. Just like Brent Gleeson does not talk about if I got issues with Jeff Struker, which I don't. Jeff's a fucking legend, but we don't know. SEALs take care of their own. I may have my opinion. Rangers take care of their own, and that we've always been.
It gets clicks though. People like drama. They do.
I know, but that's why I let Ian ask those questions, and I just sit back and go, oh, "Fuck, this is uncomfortable." I don't know, but
truthfully, that wasn't just a seamless process. It started with, Hey, David, I'm writing a new book. It's about resilience, grit, mental fortitude. Obviously, you're the first person that came to mind. And I had helped him with his book. I had talked to his writer a bunch of times, just trying to unpack, as you unpack stories that you've long since forgotten. And he's like, yeah, I want to take a look at it, but yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. And then kind of came down to crunch time, like, okay, we're trying to turn the manuscript in. We need the forward, bro. And he's a tough man, not surprised, a tough man to get hold of. Sometimes he doesn't even have a phone, or I'm like texting his wife, like, where is he in the world right now? I need the forward. And so, and then he came back and said no. And I was like, but you said yes already. So needless to say, kind of going back to the beginning of the podcast, the publisher was not so excited about me writing the book, but they were very excited about David's forward. It is what it is. Happy to exploit his good name for my benefit. And and then it was kind of a back and forth, and then finally he, because he made it clear to me that he said no to many other people, but I was like, okay, good.
Well, I brother, I have not that I got my issues or my things personally. I'm gonna stay out of it, but my respect for you, because you being that first, and I didn't know that was you were on that troop, that squad, the first ones in to Iraq. That's fucking impressive, man. I know if Ian's got more, but if not, I want to dive into that, man. I want to, because that's where, that's where leadership starts, learning it right there on the ground, and you're going balls to the wall, all the training in the world, and now here it is.
Yeah.
So what was that? What was your feeling? I mean, and I like to hear it because it brings back great memories, but just, you get the word, you're going, hey, you're sitting on the bird or you're convoying in. what's going through your head? This is your first, it's 2003, it's on, man.
Yeah.
And you're heading in you are the tip of the spear, literally and figuratively. What's going through your head,
Well,
bro?
I'll give you, there's some context, so very brief, backstory. Growing up
Sure.
in Texas, I think that's the most important part of my background, obviously. Ian was saying, I thought you were from California. I was like, bite your tongue, young man. Like, please.
Because you lived there before.
I
Yeah.
reside in California. I am not a Californian.
Shut your
I'm a-
whore mouth, Ian.
I'm a
What's
Texan,
wrong with
like,
you?
like
right.
I'm a Texan, like 50% of the special operations community. Let's come on.
Pretty
And
much.
so it's true. It's true. I don't say it's because of the size of our state. It's just because we're Texas. Anyways, I had actually, I was a recovering financial analyst. So I did my undergrad at SMU in Dallas, and I was working in finance for a year. It was one of my college buddies at SMU that had, he was one of these guys who had a lifelong dream of not just military service, but being in special operations. And this was, right before 9/11, I graduated and worked for about a year and then joined the Navy about 7 months prior to 9/11. So it was kind of a different mentality back then of service during quote unquote peacetime. A call to serve, of course, but also sometimes a bit more of a personal challenge, whatever the journey is for the individual. And while I thought that was highly admirable, I thought that was an extremely unrealistic career path for a young man. Knowing at least a little bit of what I did about the high attrition rates in that pipeline. And but when I graduated, I was working out in corporate America, if you will, and he was a senior. He and I started training together. So for me, I'd been a college athlete. It was just a way to stay fit and have an accountability partner, and also kind of help a good friend prepare for the arduous and ambiguous journey that lay before him. And so by nature of that training regimen, we started spending so much time together. It piqued my interest, of course. I started reading books about the history of not just naval special warfare, but military history. My dad had been a huge military history buff and was a Marine during Vietnam.
Wow.
And so all branches of special operations I was highly intrigued by, because all branches of special operations had an influence on what naval special warfare became, especially from Rangers to Marine Recon.
Sure.
And let's just say that the constant training regimen, the growing fascination with naval special warfare, coupled with the extremely tedious and boring nature of working 80 to 90 hours a week as a financial analyst, led to the culmination of the obvious choice, which was to quit my job and enlist in the Navy. And so
that's crazy. So you quit. You just said,
I said, fuck it, I'm out. I had never talked about military service with my parents or my brother or anything. And I sat down. I remember this, I was on the 42nd floor of a high rise in downtown Dallas, and I wrote my parents a handwritten letter. And Ian, you wouldn't know about that, but for us old guys, that's how it was done. The formality, back in the day.
Yeah, damn, that was a process in itself. There'd be less and less people making rash decisions if they actually had to sit down and write.
It is a good exercise. I was like, are you really writing this right now? Did you really write that? You're really fuck, okay. And so that was it. I quit my job. My buddy and I moved up to Crested Butte, Colorado. We trained for another 6 months at high altitude.
Yeah, that's
and then
awesome.
no, we were all in. We trained. We were doing 3 days. We were training about 15 hours a day. Take a day off a week, but and then a lot of people don't know this, but this isn't just naval special warfare, but a lot of the special operations pipelines. Like 75% of our enlisted SEALs already went to college, did undergrad, 2 to 4 years. So we chose to enlist. We had officer packages ready to go, but eventually we just dumped them in the trash and went down to the recruiter's office and signed up. Because for us too, it can be a faster path to buds, and also less competitive if you think about the slots that each class has for officers. So we run 6 classes a year, but there's only going to be so many slots for officers. Naval Academy gets half of those, and then ROTC, OCS gets the other half.
Sure.
So to get into a class is very competitive, but getting into a class on your timeline is just unrealistic. So a lot of guys just, like we did, enlist and become officers later, or just move up the ranks and become senior enlisted. And that was that. So got to Team 5. 9/11 happened between buds and advanced training called SQT, or SEAL qualification training. And we had a few days off between buds and SQT, and that's when 9/11 was. So changed the entire, obviously you remember, but changed the entire culture of the military, the entire scope of the mission, and just the mindset of everybody involved.
Yeah.
And so Afghanistan, of course, kicked off. And then by the time we had done our workup, It was I remember that 2002 leading up to the holidays, and all the head shed at SEAL Team 5 and the other teams stuck around over the holidays putting together basically their pitches, their proposals. It's like a huge sales pitch, it's like you're pitching venture capital firms
know.
for $50 million. It was like, no, send us. No, send us. Here's why. Yes, we're not the highest ranked platoon, but here's why we're going to dominate the battlefield. It's pretty funny, actually.
I forgot all about that shit. I mean, I forgot.
It's crazy. This guy spent like 2 weeks at the command during the holidays, just readying their sales pitch, if you will. And we were selected along with another platoon to form the task unit. We call them troops now, but form the task unit that deployed out there. We had SEAL Team 3 coming in early on to help with the securing of the Afa Peninsula, because we wanted to make sure that the oil was safe. It wasn't about the oil, but we wanted to make sure it was safe. And and then they pushed up with I believe the Marine Corps up towards Baghdad. Then we came in and took over to essentially running the first round on that deployment of capture kill ops in and around Baghdad, Ramadi, Fallujah, some other places. But to your point, it was the Wild West back then. There was almost no infrastructure. And so it was, and to your point, we were trained by, God bless them, but peacetime SEALs. And so all of the tactics and strategies that we came in with, many of them, as you well know, had to be adjusted on the fly. I mean, the entire military, I got a lot out of McChrystal's Team of Team books, and it kind of was a big influence on my first book, Taking Point, around organizational change. I mean, especially in the special operations community, just a constant state of change, bringing these lessons learned back from the battlefield, sometimes big macro stuff, sometimes just little tweaks to tactics, tweaks to training, down to, just CQB tactics. I mean, it's all these little things that were changing constantly, of course, as the enemy continued to adapt to our tactics as well. So it was, looking back on that first deployment, it was pretty crazy because we had limited support. We would just we'd go do sniper overwatch ops from Baghdad and Fallujah, and we'd hop in a couple Humvees, no armor, no escort, like you're driving from Dallas to Fort Worth. We just hop in and go post up for a few days.
That was
and
nuts.
Drive back. It was nuts.
It was McChrystal tremendous. He was my first battalion commander. I mean, the dude's frick. And then he was, the SOCOM, and then what was SecDef for those few years till he actually, one of the few SecDefs that stood up and said, "Hey, eat shit, President, you're screwed up," which is awesome. That was him, man. That was him. He took the bullet. But I know we skipped over basic training in Great Lakes and all that. Was that just a joke? I really, because of all the training, was that just a joke for you? I mean, it had to have been just freaking easy.
Great Lakes was kind of miserable, but in its own way. When I first got there, I was like, I definitely should have gone to OCS. That was my first thought, because I was surrounded by a bunch of like pimple-faced 17-year-old boys who were like, I'm going to Buds. I'm going to be a SEAL. I was like, oh my God, everybody, it's not that elite. I thought it was going to be elite, but everybody here is going to be a SEAL. Holy fuck. I mean, the biggest mistake of my life. And it started right at the beginning. But no, I actually got into the same group as my college buddy. So we went through all of our training together. We got in the same Buds class together. And so it was, it was painful in its own way, but it went by real fast. And so my goal was to get to Buds as fast as humanly possible. Sure. So back then we had to select an A school based on a rate that we would have to select. SEAL is now a rate, so you don't necessarily go to an A school.
Oh, no shit. You don't have to go. You don't have a job.
There's pros and cons to it. So for the guys that, the high percentage of guys that don't make it,
that wash,
you could end up anywhere because you don't have a rate necessarily. So you might end up with whatever job they give you. Whereas before you'd have a rate, and at least you'd filter into a job you've been trained for, or at least in its most basic function. So I looked at all the different options. I picked the shortest A school that was in San Diego, close to the command, which was sonar technician. So it was 4 weeks. So if I had not made it through Buds, I'd be that guy listening to like the pings on a submarine. So not a good outcome. Not a good outcome. So also another incentive not to fail.
I'm trying to think, would that be fun? I mean, you're on a submarine.
No.
No.
Can you imagine being on a submarine for 3 months?
Holy shit! I don't know how they do it. I even the big. I've been on some of the big ones and just walking through. I know that's what I say. There's like, holy shit! How can you be on here without going just complete stir crazy? Unbelievable. No, that is that's cool because you did because it is. I was an older guy too. I college and graduated, and then I just
Yeah.
that's what I picked and went that route and got ready for it, trained for it, and then but to get there, you know, and finally do it, that was totally different. As you say, uh, going through, and you're there, and I do like to talk about the time on the ground because I do believe that's where we really do learn leadership. We learn
Yeah.
because you have to learn on the fly a bunch. That first deployment though, was it 6 months or a year? And then did you come back to Afghanistan
Yeah.
after that, or
That
Iraq, or did you go to
yeah.
Afghanistan?
Yeah, I never got to experience the glory of Afghanistan. So our rotations weren't as such that I would get there. But I did
That
Iraq,
sucks.
2 deployments to Iraq, deployment to Africa. But it was really, again, going
No
back
shit.
to, and you know how it is based on your timing and when you're there and what's happening on the ground. But it was that first deployment, like for me, from my experience, that was the most kinetic, the busiest time.
That
We were doing, you know, it goes in cycles, but I mean, there was periods of a few weeks at a time where we might be doing multiple target hits in a single night.
yeah.
You know, then you'll hit a lull for a couple of weeks. We're not doing shit, and then it picks back up again. And so it was. But interestingly, before we did our first op before we even entered Iraq. We were staged at Ali Salim Air Base in Kuwait
Okay.
doing our turnover with Team 3, and during that time, we were there for a couple of weeks. We had some intel came down the pipe that it's you can't make this up. It's literally like something out of a movie. The intel was that retreating Iraqi forces and some other forces had seized a hydroelectric power plant and dam, and they were going to destroy the power plant to cause mass power and electrical outages, flood the areas below, essentially trying to cause havoc in the region and slow the advance of American troops through that region. We're going to blow up the dam. Yeah, I was like,
We're
what?
gonna. Is this
Really
real?
happening? It's like a James Bond. It's like, what? So what are we going to do? And so we're in Kuwait. So our insert platform were a bunch of Chinook helicopters. Everybody loves Chinooks. And so essentially, and this you mentioned this at the beginning, Chris. We were handed this up. It was our troop mixed with a platoon of Polish Grom. These guys are awesome, great
Those guys.
operators.
Do
Yeah.
you know Drago?
They're-
Was he one of them?
Drago was on that deployment with us. Yeah, so
Yeah, because I know he went from that to SEAL. Yeah.
Yeah, he was there. Then he was with them, and then but he lived with us mostly. It was a very strange transition. I'm not sure how it happened.
That guy's a maniac.
Have you had him on the podcast?
No, I tried to get
Yeah,
him on, and then he kind of like ducked us. Maybe at some point, man. But in person, I've met him many times, and he's a maniac.
I think it's a range. I think it's a Ranger thing, dude. I really don't think he likes Ranger. If it was a SEAL, maybe he'd come on. But maybe if you throw in a good word for it, and that we're okay. Bat boys,
yeah, he's an interesting guy, man.
We would deploy back home, and he would just stay. We're like, where the fuck is Drago? And he would just like disappear for days at a time, and he just stayed for months. Nobody checks in on him. It was very weird. But anyways, so we were handed this op, and the mission was to fly from Ali Salim Air Base all the way to this hydroelectric power plant in like central Iraq. It was like
on Chinooks.
It was like a 4-hour target insert. And so, you're frozen, your legs and ass are numb, you're just pissed off, just like say 12 strong. It's like, why the Army uses Chinooks, don't you? So you're good and mad when you get to the battlefield. And
it's the truth, man. It's the truth.
I know, it was horrible. And we did in-flight refuel and everything. And so we were going to hit the target. We had elements that were going to be taking down certain buildings. We actually dirt dove this thing. We rehearsed this thing for 2 straight weeks.
Wow.
We had contractors at the base build us some mock structures. Not 3-story buildings, but enough mock structures at least to understand the perimeters of where the buildings were, the distance between landing zones and buildings, and the different things, because there was also a surrounding village around the plant too. So the Polish were going to own that area and the buildings and the surrounding structure. We owned the main power plant building with another platoon of SEALs, mobility platoon. It was a new thing we had just stood up. So a SEAL platoon, but they were flying in all of our DPVs and other vehicles to basically do rubbing patrols once we hit the target, because we were going to hold the target for several days before conventional forces, I think the Army forces in the air, are going to come in and take over. And it wasn't a super hot target, but there was some obviously some pushback from folks on the target, but we took the target pretty quickly. It was so it was a pretty smooth first stop, but a lot of moving parts. Compared to some of the other just nightly raids we would do, that was kind of a kind of a big complex mission with a lot of different elements from working with the Grom for the first time ever. We worked with them throughout that entire deployment off and on, but that was our first op that we did before we were even in Iraq. We literally came back to Kuwait, stayed there for another week before we even deployed into Iraq after that for that first deployment. So
man, that's freaking amazing. I do. I ain't gonna lie anymore.
Here's one part.
Man,
here's one part from that story, Chris, that you won't miss. It might even trigger
okay.
Some emotions.
Let me hear it.
First off, we hit this target. There was definitely some lessons learned in the debrief that we could apply, document, share with the organization. But a lot of us hadn't, based on the way our gear was configured, we were fast roping out of these Chinooks. And some of the guys hadn't secured their radios in the right pouches and use zip ties. You can see where I'm going with this. And so several guys lost their radios on the rope, on the fast rope, and those bounced into the river. And so after securing the target, what do you think we did first?
You didn't go into the river, did you?
Oh yeah, they were like, "You're finding those radios."
No shit.
The people, the powers that be that were way back wherever at some tactical operations center, like, you guys are getting in the fucking drink and getting those radios. Of course, we never found them.
I was like, no, are you shitting?
And they wouldn't even work, right? I mean, after being submerged in water, you'd assume.
No, but that's just.
You got. So I wasn't your. My next question you answered already. I think maybe I missed it. It wasn't your command. It was the fucking idiots in the rear that are telling you got to find those radios. The S5 with the supply sergeant's going, holy shit! I got to write these off. Oh my god, we're gonna get charged for these.
Yeah.
What the? Are you? So did you? How long did you spend before? Or did you just kind of say,
a few hours? I mean, we kind of like checked the box. We're like, all right, guys, let's get.
Yeah, so you notionally did it, right? We checked them, but holy shit.
Sorry, guys, couldn't find the radios. But it was just like, again, as you know, it's not like the movies. All right, let's squeeze in some administrative bullshit while you're downrange.
Now, there's a smart ass ranger out there that would be me if I was listening to this going. Obviously, that's why we have 550 cord, guys. That's what 550. But I'm not that smart ass ranger because I have dropped shit. I was thinking you were going to say one came off during and hit you at the back of the head. Your dude, the RTO was up there and it fell off and it hit you. I thought you were going with that, going, holy shit, I got brained by a fucking 117 by something that fell on somebody.
I almost died because I was fast roping the quickie saw, but that's a whole different story.
Oh no.
A lot of new guy lessons learned on those first 2 weeks of the deployment. But I'll tell you, Chris, the biggest disappointment in the fine art of extreme ownership, all jokes aside, it was my platoon commander's fault. Because we trusted him as a former Army guy, a Ranger. Like, I did all this hard work to get into the SEAL teams, the Naval Special Warfare community, and my first platoon commander, fucking former Army guy. Like, what are you gonna do?
Was he really?
No, he honestly, he was all jokes. He was a phenomenal leader, just a great guy. But you get, in Spec Ops, you get a lot of cross pollination. So we had two former Marines, and our platoon commander was a former Army guy. So.
What was he? Was he from battalion? Was he a Ranger guy? Was he battalion or was he?
He wasn't. He'd never been in a Ranger battalion, but did Ranger school.
Got his tab. Well, there you go. There it is. That's it right there.
He didn't say anything about the 550 cord though, so you gotta blame him.
It is his fault. It is dude. Those are the coolest stories to me because to me, and I do want to get into that a little bit more. You talk about lessons learned, things that you really what was aside from maybe using a thicker zip tie, 550 cord and burning. But what was the biggest lesson learned? And you may have already said it, and I apologize if I missed it, but that first insertion, that dam where you had that dam up, where you came back or maybe you thought about it later when you were writing the book and be like, man, this is what I learned.
Yeah, I think, if I remember correctly from our more, formal ARRs, but, or ARs, I think that, a lot of it was just general clarity on and alignment on roles and responsibilities, timing, things that we, did rehearse in training. But also making sure that we were fleshing out some of these things and making sure that we were really setting that tone for good communication, good transparency, pushing back, asking the right questions, even from the newest guy to the most senior person in the room, not just in the debrief, but when we're training, in the room, let's make sure we get everything out in the open. And that obviously that's a cultural thing within a platoon that will evolve over time, especially as you bring in new folks and older guys filter out. But then, throughout that whole deployment with the pace and the tempo of the operations, we were, as you can imagine, we were religious. We never skipped an after action review ever. Sometimes we be doing informal ones in the back of a pickup truck on the way to another target. What we learned 10 minutes ago, make sure we don't fuck that up on this target.
Wow.
Then of course we'll do the more formal ones the next morning or as soon as we possibly can, in the room, and really talk about those lessons learned, those insights. But also usually it just, as it comes down to the little stuff. Usually it's not some big strategic screw up. It's small mistakes in your CQB tactics, or leaving a gap, or when your room entry, I noticed this and that. Little things that are little things, but they're not little, as you well know. They can cost us lives. But it was that was a great learning process, not for all of us, not just the new guys, because we were all new to this. None of us had been to combat before, but also learning, understanding one, how well trained you are, but also how far you have to go.
How far you have to go? Yeah.
And so and understanding the seriousness of the undertaking. But again, it was always little stuff. But I remember one thing that really stuck with me, though, when we'd have some of those tough debriefs, where it's, but like for me specifically, where it's like, why did I do that? Or that mistake that I made, or down to little shit like I forgot to put new batteries, in my laser. It's like, but little stuff that could be big stuff. I remember two that stuck with me on that first deployment. One was we got into this cycle, this rhythm, because we were operating so much. We'd get home early in the morning, we'd sleep, till midday. We'd do a debrief. Guys would kind of work out, do their own thing. Then we'd have a brief for the op that night, eat chow, rest, whatever, do some rehearsals. So we would just use, empty buildings in the palace that we were in for CQB, just doing some rehearsals, just getting loose for that night. And we'd been at the range, just sighting in weapons, making sure we're good to go. And there was like one pistol mag that I had not put a few more rounds in. It wasn't empty, but it wasn't completely loaded. And we had just cleared this target. And I remember this distinctly. One of my closest friends, he's like my kid's godfather, a guy named Marco, and that's not his real name, wrote No Easy Day. After our platoon, he went on to Green Team training and all that stuff. Phenomenal guy. Just one of the best humans.
I'm like, everybody in this audience, I think, knows the real name. I don't think.
Okay, Matt. Yeah. Anyway, so Matt lives to me. And just a phenomenal human. He kind of took me under the wing when I was there as a new guy. Nothing formal, but he's always willing to help the new guys. He's a get there early, stay late, help everybody, the nicest guy in the world. And he looked at me. So the kind of person, where I'm going with this, is you don't want to disappoint him.
Sure.
And it was one of the things, like with our parents, I'd rather get screamed at than my dad say, I'm disappointed in you. And you're like, no.
I know.
And so he
feel like that big.
I don't know what it was or what he saw, or he noticed something. He's like, are all your mags, are all your mags loaded? Or it was right before we left. And I was like, yeah. And I guess I hesitated. And I don't know what he did. He went right for my pistol mags for some reason. And the one fucking mag he pulls out, of course, is the one that's half loaded. I'm just like, oh my God. I was like, oh, that, yeah. The look, he didn't even say anything. The look on his face was I'm talking about it now, like 20 years later. The look on his face was just soul-sucking, heart-wrenching, like devastation. At least that was my perspective of it, because he's a person that I held on a pedestal, and he had really poured a lot of time into me. And just, again, something that to the average person listening or watching this might say, well, that's not really a big deal. It is a big deal. It's the littlest things that can be the biggest deal. And the military attention to detail is like your number one foundation. And then just other things like that. But I do remember in some of those tough debriefs, it happened more than once, but specifically one after one of our first, real hot gunfights on a target. And, somebody called me out for, one of my CQB room entry, tactics or maneuvers. And we ripped it apart and we talked about it. It was good learning for everybody. But then he pulled me aside after the debrief and he said, hey, Gleeson, come here. He's one of those guys he had been a Marine before. So this was his first combat deployment in that sense, but he had been a Marine, recon guy, sniper, a little bit older guy, experienced. And he was like, hey, man, I just want to make sure there's no love lost between us. the reason I brought that up and the reason I called you out the way I did wasn't just for you, it was for everybody to learn from that, because a lot of guys are doing little things like that. And just, just that gesture of brotherhood and fraternity and solidarity, just making sure that he's like, look, here's why I did that, but making sure we're good. There's no love loss. It's because I love you that I'm bringing these things up, that kind of thing. Those are the things you miss the most, the brotherhood and that type of support that you have from one another is, and you can't replicate that anywhere else in the civilian world.
It's
I was just gonna say that's an awesome Mark Owen, or Air Force quote Mark Owen story, and I was just wondering, man, like, what do you still stay in touch with that guy? Because I just remember.
Oh yeah, talk to Mister.
So I'm curious to this, because I just remember when that book came out, which was a huge success, No Easy Day. And then because he didn't go through the review process and all that, the government basically, from what I remember, they took all the money that he made off that book.
Horrible. And that's like just scratching the surface of the nightmare that DOD put on him. I mean, someone who literally gave their entire young adult and adult life to the special operations community. I mean, and a team leader, a dev group. I mean, that's like being a made man in the mafia. You have to be a top performer and pour your soul into it. And
they truly, like, they made an example of him.
Oh yeah. And he had gotten advice. He just didn't get good advice. He literally got advice from a Navy JAG. And so he thought he was getting the appropriate advice on how to get the book vetted and what the process is to go through, because he just didn't know what he didn't know. A lot of like the rest of us. And so he got the advice he got. He applied the advice, and well, that didn't work out. And so they used him. And let's be honest, it's if it had been someone else or a different book, not a dev group guy, probably would have just been flushed under the rug, or you wouldn't have heard about it. But it was the book, the first book about that mission. So we could peel that onion back for days as far as the reasoning from the upper echelons of leadership in the military and government as to why they took why he was so instantly persona non grata, and why they just really tried to destroy his life financially, emotionally. Wow. They tried to go after any revenue he had gotten from speaking engagements, everything.
Yeah, I remember.
So, yeah, it's his story to tell, so I don't want to go too far. But
I just
let's just say that they took everything.
Yeah, I remember working at Sirius XM at the time, and we'd have like Fox News on at the office, and I just remember segments or like scrolling in the bottom of the screen that basically the government like seized everything that guy made off of that book. And that was insane to me. It really was, because he didn't go through the review process the way that, like, it was a completely unfounded, I feel like, punishment for something that could have been handled much better.
And from a bunch of bureaucrats who've never held a rifle downrange. Yeah. I mean, it's just like it's really disappointing, and it's sad. And Chris, I know you feel the same way when our brothers and sisters are treated that way after literally pouring their soul and their life at the cost of marriages and being away from their children. Having to recoup those relationships years later when your kids are in their 20s. I mean, it's and then to treat someone like that, whoever they are, it doesn't matter. It's just it's very unfortunate. And they're still, he and Tamara, his wife, are still, they're still dealing with some of those repercussions. They're past it now, but from a financial standpoint, they're still, I mean, I think they have to donate their great grandchildren and their grandchildren to DOD. It's a long payment plan, I believe.
it makes no sense, because there was, I read that book when I was in Benghazi. Actually, I remember reading. That's when we were passing it around, and Oz had it, and I read it, and I remember I went to Jack. And I said, "What the fuck's the big deal? There's nothing classified in this thing. This is a good book, man. There's absolutely zero OPSEC in here." I said, "Why is this thing?" And we just couldn't make any sense of it. And then, of course, a few weeks later, we got attacked, so I didn't think about it anymore. But when I came back, and we went this route here. I don't know if he remembers or not, but Mark, he did speak to me before we did our book, and he directed me. That's when we got our clearance attorney. He said, "You do it." So he may not remember. It was on the phone. I was about ready to go speak at a tennis event in Cincinnati. Yeah. And I said, "Call this guy before you do the whatever and the book." And I called him, and he says, "This is what you need to do." I didn't tell him he just said, to protect yourself. So even then, when he was going through it, he was still helping somebody that he didn't even know who the hell he was, and he was helping us do it where
Yeah.
we were. So that's awesome to hear that he's always been that kind of guy. Because
Always.
been that with me, man. That's freaking amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the missions and you talk about to me, and I get it with the small things, the little things, the ARs and how the brotherhood's there and how you just can't replicate it. You know, I do some corporate speaking myself. I used to do quite a bit. I don't do as much anymore. I like to be home a lot more, but how do you, when you talk to corporations, how do you make it relatable to them? Because it is hard. It's difficult to make it relatable because it's not war, it's not combat. But hey, you're in the wardroom, you're in the boardroom. It still kind of is. What do you do? How do you bring it to make it relatable? Where this is what I've learned. This is how you can make you successful in business. Well,
I think fundamentally we just, one of the parts of the process, it's evolved obviously over time, but one of the things we do is really try to learn as much as we can first about the audience, the demographic, and the organization, especially if it's one specific organization. If it's a broader audience, we want to learn about the event and the purpose of the event itself. But really, when we can, we learn as much as we can about the organization and the goals behind why they're having the event. We do research on their organizational culture, their values, whether it's a sales kickoff or an offsite leadership meeting, things like that. But really, fundamentally, it's about the principles of effective leadership, the principles of high performance teams, and you break it down to the principles and the frameworks and the methodologies that we've lived by and have evolved in special operations. You're talking about fundamentally the very same things that apply to any organization that's seeking growth, transformation, sustainability, retaining top talent, all the things that we seek to do in the military. A lot of the basics and the core pillars are exactly the same. So if you strip some of the punch in the face type of like hardcore, it can't just be all about combat stories. It's got to be very relatable to most audiences, and it's it's something you learn and get feedback and evolve and adapt. But most audiences want some of that because there's the fascination with it. There's got to be the entertainment value and whatnot. But at the same time, and you can't please everybody, but for it to be as relatable as possible, you bring it back, to the core foundation of high performance as it relates to an individual, as it relates to a team, to a business, to a larger organization, but also just to people in general when it comes to natural degrees of resilience, grit, adaptability, having a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset, just a lot of things that either I've researched or written about, or that have landed in a lot of the curriculum and learning modules that from a consultative standpoint that we've developed over time to teach in medium to global enterprises. So we've learned also a lot about how it applies to them and use that because it's not just about speaking, but mostly what we've done over the past 5 years is consultative work. So my first two companies out were tech companies, and then built this management consulting firm. Now we're transforming all of what we do into software. So we're going back into tech, but we intentionally did that though to learn the challenges and opportunities that organizations have, and shockingly, they're all the same because they're all people. Whether you're DoD, Wells Fargo, or some Texas-based construction company, everybody has the same problems and everybody has the same opportunities. And a lot of it comes down to the fact that leadership is the problem and the solution, typically to most organizations' obstacles. So.
I had a question related to that actually. So you've definitely encountered this a ton, and I've just seen it as someone who does a podcast with Navy SEALs and Army Rangers and that type of thing. There definitely is like a segment of the special operations community that's very vocal that are like, I don't like that Navy SEALs bring what they do to the business world. They're profiting off the Trident. They're profiting off the Brent. Just like some people don't even like people putting out books, which both of you guys have done. Or, in your case, putting out a book called Embrace the Suck. For them, they're like, hey, that's a Navy SEAL thing. I don't like this being sold to the corporate world. So I'm just wondering, what's your response to people who have that criticism?
Well, interestingly, and Chris, this, a lot of the hate, if you will, or the haters reside right within our own communities.
I know, that's what I was going to say. That's usually
we don't have to go far, Ian, to find the haters. They're in your platoon. They're in your troop. They're at your team, for crying out loud. But honestly, just like anything else, you do what you do. You do it in an ethical manner. You do it in a manner that elevates others. that respects the community, that doesn't exploit anything that we did, that doesn't share obviously anything that we shouldn't be sharing. If you do that in a way to bring what we do to better others, people, individuals, teams, organizations, that's truly meaningful, then how can you really hate on that? Secondarily, you're always going to have people who are like, well, I did more than you, or you shouldn't be writing. I'm writing a book, but you shouldn't write a book. Gotten that before. Not in those words, but let's just say, yeah, from the other people who are writing books and deeply exploiting themselves, but you guys, I can do that. But you guys can't profit the way I'm profiting.
I've heard that so many times too. Could I just say, like, when we had Brandon Webb on, because when I worked with Brandon Webb, he was one of the first to write a book. And look, I know there's plenty of criticism of him in particular, but he made this point when he was on the show. He said a lot of the guys who criticized me for writing a book went on to write books.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's enough to where you just throw your hands up, you just stay in your lane, do your thing, and tune out the noise, tune out the haters. Again, basic psychology, but people who are doing that, it's something that they're not happy with internally on their own. It's got nothing to do with you typically, or if it does, they're just projecting on you their own shortcomings. So ultimately, you got to get past that kind of thing. But again, you want to do it in everything you do in a very respectful manner, in a way that elevates others, elevates the memory of our brothers and sisters, and using an opportunity to give back as well. I've been on the board of the Seal Family Foundation for
That's cool.
10 years. So, I try to do things in a manner, and again, it's not just about, having worn a trident. I mean, my contribution pales in comparison to so many. I've got buddies like Matt and Chris who've done far more than I have ever done. But, but if you do it in a way that, that is meaningful in a sense, that you can bring something that will positively impact other people's lives, then, I think it's worth doing. So,
and if you're thankful to those that, like with Matt, that brought you, that, hey, this is where I learned. I'm thankful for the guys that before me, because if it wasn't for them and their knowledge, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be alive. I give them, and I hate to say it, but I give a lot of respect to two Navy SEALs when I was GRS, that Dirty Dan Simpson and Randy Leonard, Horsecock and Dirty Dan. They were amazing. I mean, and they're the ones that really got me a lot of like helped me with the vetting process before I went through all the GRS stuff. And I love those guys. So I'm with you, man. As long as you just do it in a very, very ethical way, and you give back and you help out the guys that are coming now, that are starting to come out, and you give them help. And over time, I do agree with you. Over time, in the beginning, we get hammered. We will. It's just everything else. But over time, if people see you do it the right way, to me, it becomes less and less. To me, it does.
I get it. If you're just shining the spotlight on yourself for the sake of your own glory, yeah, you make yourself an easy target. But if you're like you said, if you're giving back, and like I mentor guys into and through buds now, and I hire guys as they transition out. I've hired a ton of vets. And one of the things I wanted to do is go out and grind so I can be successful enough to, one, give my time and my money, but also build something meaningful enough to where I can hire veterans as they transition out. We've done that. One of our VPs is a 30-year retired SEAL. He literally put my class, so David Goggins and me, and then the other guys, he put our class through training. And then, back pre 9/11, we might have to go to war together someday. We're like, yeah, whatever. And then we all went to war together. I was like, oh, you really meant that. But he transitioned out, and he's one of our vice presidents. I mean, I truly feel blessed to have that opportunity. But again, if you're going to do it, you need to do it in a way that gives back to the community and to the families, and just to others outside of the military itself. So
the great ones are humble, like yourself. If people haven't been listening this whole time, what I've caught even in all your stories, even when that Marine that came over to become a SEAL, when he pulled you aside and you didn't take offense to it, you were humble. You still.
I took offense to it. But,
why?
No, by offense I mean crying.
Crying in my room. I'm ashamed, but. The people realize it's all, do we have egos? Yeah, we've got egos. Yeah, of course I do. I got a huge ego. But I'm also willing, if I'm wrong, and that's humility. I'm wrong. All right, tell me, what did I screw up on? You got a point there. And people don't see that, even though that's prevalent in the Special Operations Committee, as humility is there, because they do see the
Yeah.
They do, and that's there too. They do the drink it. When I could, I can't anymore. My 53-year-old liver and bladder doesn't handle it like it used to. But the drink and the bravado, the hype, that's there. But
Yeah.
there was always time, like you said, in ARs where you have to have pretty fucking thick skin, and you're going to get called out on the shit that you did wrong, and it is sincerely you did wrong, and you just have to learn from it, and that's
Yep.
huge. And that's if all y'all missed it out there, I didn't. That just means I'm smarter than you. There's the ego.
Yes, well, obviously.
Your career is great, and we don't do 6-hour podcasts like some do. But you went through your career. When was it the decision you got out, the route that you went, or did you just, that was just kind of fell into that route?
It's, in light of being, transparent, it's something that, and I've talked to other guys who did like 20 years, 30 years. They're like, you're always going to feel that way. But, I actually carry a lot of guilt, for getting out when I did. I made the determination of that. I had never planned on doing a career. So I had my eye on a specific graduate school program and, not necessarily entrepreneurship, but getting back into some other, business related things. And it had been a very, very busy time. And also a lot of us were kind of like, well, there's, if you look at the history books, there's no way these conflicts should continue on at this level of tempo. Boy, were we wrong. 2 decades of combat. So, and again, like I've got buddies who've done 14 combat deployments. It's unimaginable. Now, granted, their personal lives have obviously
it suffers. No, it suffers, brother.
Suffered greatly.
It does.
But I hold those guys in in the highest of respect for giving their entire adult lives, and then they go out and still dominate their post-military careers. It's fascinating. And I had some other stuff in my personal life going on at the time. I was like, oh, kind of need to prioritize that. So, and I had extended a little bit to do, third deployment. And so I got out, and then, I dove right into grad school literally 5 days after I got out. So my transition plan was to have 0 downtime, like literally none. And I had applied for grad school before my last deployment. And a lot of guys do this, they start thinking about their transition.
Sure.
2 years, especially guys who've been in for 20 plus, 30 years. So I started thinking about a year out, just considering different options. But it was good for me at the time. I do have regrets of getting out, or that feeling at least of, God, you should have stayed in. You're always going to feel, like you left your brothers on the battlefield. And then, I continued to, our reunions oftentimes are funerals. And so continuing to go to funerals and see the guys, and then that feeling continues to just further ingrain itself in your soul. That never goes away, but it's also something that's part of our responsibility to carry. But yeah, transition out, just dove right into the next thing. So I think that worked well for me, just to start learning new things, building a new network, and then building companies after that. So I was so distracted then by that. That became the new normal of chaos. And yeah.
I want to make sure we get into like what you're doing currently with Accelerate, and we will. But one thing I wanted to make sure that we hit on before then, actually, and it's funny because Chris brought up drinking and SEAL teams earlier, and I noticed on your post that you put up that, well, it resonated with a lot of people, resonated with me. And I think you're still on this path that you were like, I'm done drinking, I quit drinking, and you're like, it's improved my life tremendously. And as someone myself, I don't know your story. I never had an alcohol problem in the very least, but I just slowly started to drink less and less because it didn't appeal to me anymore. And I probably have not had a drink, and like I said, I don't have a problem. So maybe like 2 years, I was just like, this isn't doing it for me anymore. I mean, it's a depressant. You wake up the next morning, even for me, because I became a lightweight with how little I drink, that the next morning I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling crappy, and I'm like, this does not accelerate my life in any way. This is not positive in my life. It's putting poison into my body. And yes, I know Chris owns a vodka company, so this might be contradictory of
and
that.
God bless you for that.
But for me, it was not a good aspect of my life anymore, and I don't miss it in the very least. As much as people say, oh, I guess you don't like the taste of alcohol. No, I love like an IPA or even a margarita at times, but I was like, the negatives outweigh the positives for me, and I haven't looked back. So what's your story with that?
Yeah, well, I quitting, so I'm heavily drinking again hammered right now. See, it was a terrible,
Hey,
terrible decision.
you're doing a
No.
great job. What's your secret, Brew? Because you're holding it together very well.
I'm holding it together. It's experience, Chris. Experience. Training. No, it was something that that I had been, kind of, what's the new cliche term, but like sober curious for a little while, because I'd honestly had a lot like, my first platoon commander. You get thrown into
Yeah.
the wild ride of special operations, and it's a work hard, play hard environment. But he didn't drink. Good Christian dude, but also did not drink. He'd go out with the boys for that mandatory officer period. Then he'd give the responsibility to the chief, to make sure we don't go to prison.
Yeah.
And you know how it is. And then also I had, truthfully, I had been, my drinking had kind of escalated over the years, and just with the stuff you carry, and then the rigors and
Yeah.
stress of entrepreneurship and things like that. Of course, just justifying it, you start lying to yourself that, well, I'm a high functioning. I would never say alcoholic. I'm a high functioning person. No, you're not. Maybe you're accomplishing some stuff, but ultimately you're operating, if you're drinking relatively consistently, you're operating at a good 50-60% on a good day of your potential. Well, fuck that. Excuse me, but fuck that. So and I also started seeing it have a negative impact on my marriage, on my ability to be fully present with my children. And then with traveling a lot in the early days when I was speaking a lot and building the consultative practice, gone all the time. Chris, and it's so when you're home, you need to be
You can be home.
emotionally,
Yeah.
physically present. You need to be home. And then last year was stressful with work, and then all these things kept happening where I'm like, God, I'm good on your tests. No more tests. Just give me some grace. Like test after test after test. I'm like, I'm good. I'm good. And then my dad passed away, like suddenly out of nowhere. I was in Dallas on a business trip, and he had a fall and it caused a brain bleed. 17 hours later, he was gone.
Sorry.
And that was kind of a catalyst to, and Chris, you know this, it's Ian, not that you don't, but I'm just saying, like, having lost, family, but also lost so many friends and teammates, that, and it's not a bad thing or a scary thing or a taboo thing to think about death. It is the one thing that's certain in life, is that we will all die. But considering, thinking, and reflecting on our own mortality does, or should at least, push us to consider what really matters in life. What are our real priorities? How much time am I wasting on the wrong relationships, the wrong activities, unhealthy things, bad habits? I don't have that much time. Hell, tomorrow could be the last day. What am I doing that's just a waste of time, that's deteriorating my body, that I'm making me lose productivity, that's damaging relationships that mean something to me? Well, alcohol was one of those things. There are a few things, but there was one thing that I could point to. And so for me, that was it. I didn't know meetings, nothing. I just fucking quit and never looked back. And like you said, people are like, wow, was that hard? I'm like, actually, no, it wasn't hard at all. I was so, like all of us in this virtual room, I'm an all-in guy. I'm all or nothing. There's no, well, I'm going to explore moderation. No, that doesn't work. It's so once I made that decision, it was like, I will never taste alcohol again in my whole life. So I've only got, based on my calculations, 38, 39 years left. So I'm on a good track.
How long has it been since your last drink?
It's been about 10 months.
Oh, wow. That's awesome, man.
Yeah. So, but honestly, and I don't preach this to anybody, but since we're on the topic, and insert bad habit, it could be drinking, it could be anything else. But for me, for my journey, I'm telling you, just absolute game changer. Marriage is better than it's ever been. In almost 13 years, fully present with my children. Business is going through the roof. I'm taking a company through a full transformation, raising capital, building software, all these things that, to be honest, in the days that I was drinking, probably would have caused an immense, or I know they would have caused an immense amount of anxiety. Because again, going back to what you said, Ian, like intellectually, we know that it's poison. Yet we tell ourselves, like, oh, I got to have some drinks to chill out and combat my anxiety. But then you wake up the next day with deeper anxiety, feeling like shit, and all the problems are still there, or worse. So it's like it doesn't really make any sense at all. Yet we keep doing it. We keep lying to ourselves and telling ourselves that. But so for me, again, not preaching. It's just, for me though, it's been, my productivity is through the roof. And I had a lot of buddies, like I was saying before, that I deeply respect and have done phenomenal things in their career. A lot of them, guys from the teams or military special operations, that have done great things that I really respect. I was like, all right, I've got a support network, and I do. And it's been really cool, because now, I mean, the number one thing is I get to judge everyone else. So that's the most important thing. My wife will be pouring a glass of wine. I'm like, oh, not a second glass of wine, are you? No. Hey, it's not a big deal. Not judging. No, you go ahead.
That's the best part of it.
She doesn't like that.
You can, not that I'm your wife, because I just say, but you're
not gonna
welcome.
go-
Not yet. Anything's
not-
possible.
in
possible.
today's world, who knows? But you're welcome. You're welcome to no, but to judge. But you're right, man. You're right, and there is whether. Because I did when I was divorced and all, I was drinking heavily, and I was it was terrible, and the kids were, and yeah, you have to find a way, and it is you'll say, well, Tano, you're hypocritical because you have your own. Okay, then I am. If you want to call me a hypocrite, but if you are in moderation, and I did as far as drinking one drink every month or that's it. My wife drinks, but regardless, or you just quit entirely, and that's great.
Yeah.
But you're right, overdoing it, and I've been there where I have overdone it. And we drank the shit. I drank all the time. And 2017 is when that finally came to a head. And you're right with the kids, man. Just being present with the children. We miss so much that if we are home consistently and then we drink it and we're not present, we're just sacrificing the time with our kids. And I did that. So when you were talking about that, it reminded me of my 16-year-old son and him and I having our coming to Jesus, because I missed him forever till he was 15, and him finally coming to me and said, Dad, you says, well, I have a little boy now, and he says, you're nicer to him than you are to me. What happened? And I look back and I felt like the great Santini. I felt like Robert Duvall going, holy shit, son. And that was when the drinking stopped as well. But that's well said, man. And
how long were you in doing the GRS thing?
GRS for 8 years, and then before that we were all in the. You may remember Eric Saxon was one. Brent Jones, Monkey. We were all the early Blackwater days when it was the Bremer and all before GRS it was called, and then it went to Polar Quest, and then it went to whatever OGA, ORA, and that was real first Blackwater guys, and that was fun. So we were probably running around. I was right. I came 6 months after Helveston got hung, and Zovko and those guys. And that was, So, it was.
Did you ever cross paths with one of my best friends at Phi was Scotty Wirtz. He passed away. Yeah. He, in Syria, the suicide bombing, the book that's coming out about,
I didn't, holy shit. No, I did.
So remember the four Americans in the suicide bombing. So Scotty was there, and the husband of that was there. He's written a book about her.
Okay,
story, so.
And it's coming out.
We got to get
either out or coming out soon. I don't know, Ian. You know what I'm talking about, right?
No, I haven't heard, but I'd be down to get whoever.
No, but I didn't know Scott. I didn't know that. Holy shit!
Yeah.
Dude.
Well, they all died, but
But the author of the book could be great to get on. That's good to know.
He's phenomenal. He's former. They met in the military. He's a former Army guy, and so
Jesus.
She was working for the agency, and so the four folks that were at this cafe. I believe that they've been running some sources and doing some stuff, and they were there meeting or debriefing something, and that's when the attack happened. But
man, those fams, it's tough, man. Shit.
My favorite, some of my favorite memories from the team though are me and Scotty running around Africa with limited oversight in our activities, all legit and for work, but. That guy was a wild man.
And it's so fun because you're just running around the town finding. I found the best places. I still would remember sitting in Libya, even by myself over the Mediterranean. I was doing my familiarization. I was going around a famine, and I was doing, and I'd stop at it, and I'm sitting there as a burning tank, and I'm having some chai, and there's the Mediterranean, and I'm open air at this hotel that's still open, isn't it? And those are some of the best memories that you have. It's like, holy shit. And you're
like, what am I like? Where am I right now?
This is so real. And this is so fucking cool. And I'm enjoying, man. Yeah, of course I want some falafel. Bring it over, man.
Yes. I'm going to say yes to everything.
Yes. But you didn't, Scotty, I just knew from the GRS, the GRS time. And I don't know if you knew Jeremy Wise, who was over in, he was one of the Chapman, our GRS guys that when they had
I never met him,
but yeah, but I didn't mean to go silent. I don't know. Nobody told me. I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
just one of those things that through the network, and you start getting text messages, and it doesn't matter how long you're out, but the longer that some of the guys are in, or it's basic math. You keep keep going down range, and
and it happens, and guys do. And I just found out I lost a Blackwater buddy today. He died of cancer. All of a sudden died of cancer. So I probably burned pits or something. So it's been one hell of a day, bro. So
sorry, man.
Damn,
no,
that's crazy to hear.
But no, I'm really happy I finally got to meet you, dude. You are one of the most positive, and you are how I thought you'd be. Just you'd be a great ranger, dude. You know what? You would make
it. Yeah, I made a huge mistake joining the Navy. I was like, what? I knew it was at the time.
No, you did the right thing. No, you got more money. You got smaller teams. You don't have to call everybody sergeant all the time. You did it great, but you would have fit in.
Didn't have to blouse my pants and all that shit.
Didn't have to do that shit. You didn't back in the day. I mean, now you don't have to have high, but back in the day, this was long. Back in the day,
yeah. I know. With Dudley, our first platoon commander, we were like, "Sir, you can kind of relax the hair, bro. Like, you don't need to." I still kind of had that sort of like command and control army style about him, but the senior enlisted guys took care of that.
The last thing I want to make sure I asked you about before we go is your current company, Accelerate, that you're working in the field of AI, because man, I just feel like anybody who follows what's going on in tech, other than doing this, I work with a cybersecurity identity management company. Man, nice. AI, like anybody who thinks this is a bubble is sadly mistaken, because what we're seeing right now is like the infancy, and it's already to the point where you cannot tell what is real or what is fake. This is not going anywhere. So I would like to hear just how you got into AI, what's Accelerate doing, and that's really my last question.
No, it's just quick backstory there. After exiting my second company, it was a digital media and analytics company. But I really found a passion, not for those industries necessarily, or more like tech focused companies, but just for going back to kind of the roots of what we do in the military, and just building great teams and a great culture and a great value system and effective leaders at every level. And so what I wanted to do is to explore, if not go all into management consulting. So I actually wrote my first book, Taking Point, about leadership and leading organizational change. I was so blessed to be able to have McChrystal write the front cover blurb.
Cool.
It was a crazy story. I'll be brief, but I had been talking to Chris Fussell, who was a managing partner at, SEAL managing partner at McChrystal Group. And, I was kind of trying to get him to, I really wanted to, use him to meet McChrystal and spend some time with McChrystal. And no offense, Chris, if you're listening, but and Chris they were super busy. It was the end of the year, and he wasn't blowing me off, but he was just distracted by other things. And so I was like, well, whatever, that avenue's not working. So I looked at how Chris's email was structured. It was chris.fussell@McChrystal Group. I was like, oh, give it a shot. So I wrote Stanley.McChrystal at McChrystal Group, shot an email. I'd already shipped books to the office. What a great man. Not only expecting just to get a bounce back, like the email not delivered. Not only did he respond to me within 15 minutes, he responded saying, hey, we got the books. Thank you so much. I did look at it, because his book, Team of Teams, was a big influence, for me, and some of the philosophies that ended up in Taking Point when it comes to organizational transformation, and drawing from the military into how we can apply that in the corporate world. And he responded graciously with a blurb that he said I could use for the cover of the book.
Wow.
15 minutes after sending the email, I was like, that's why he is who he is. It's anyway, so I wrote that book with the specific strategic intent of building a company around it. So a lot of the principles and philosophies that I researched on and wrote in the book, we built a team around and a philosophy around, for management consulting and bringing that into the corporate world. So, it started, how this goes. It started small with speaking, and then speaking, evolving into upselling them into longer term engagements around workshops and some leadership sessions, into ultimately the goal is, in-depth leadership and talent development strategies and organizational development. We've done full-scale organizational change management initiatives with medium and enterprise companies. So it really escalated quickly, but the vision was always to either further tech enable what we do. And then AI came along and we started using AI, not within software, but just to increase, frankly, our own efficiencies and how we deliver content, how we write curriculum, how we do reporting out to clients, how we analyze employee-based surveys and 360s and peer reviews and engagement surveys. AI plays this where it's, you said, it's like, it's so amazing if used correctly, it almost feels like it's illegal. It's astonishing. And so, but then we hit this point where I had to make a significant business decision. Do we continue this path or do we just go full software? And so back like the same time when I was a financial analyst telling people I was going to join the Navy and with the goal of becoming a SEAL, everybody's like, you're an idiot. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Stick with what you're doing, you finance nerd. Stuff to that effect. And you're just not, you're not a physical specimen, so you're just going to fail either way. And so a lot of really good constructive feedback from close friends and colleagues and family, including my twin brother. And who's an artist, by the way? No offense. I'm like nice dreadlocks, but hey, thanks for the feedback. So we're fraternal twins. I'll put it there. We're polar opposites in every possible capacity you can imagine. And so I started obviously doing some networking and talking to other friends or colleagues who have built software companies. And some of them, obviously you get like, it's really hard. You should stick with what you do. Even venture capital firms are like, then you got to transition fully over to this new thing. And I'm like, well, fuck this. If everybody's telling me I shouldn't do it, I'm definitely doing it. But again, just like anything else, you build a good network, you learn as much as you possibly can, you mitigate as many risks as you possibly can. And I built a business model around this and a deck and went out and 6 weeks ago started raising capital, and we've raised almost $1 million in 6 weeks. As what you call pre-seed funding. You used to call it friends and family. It's basically the same thing. It's a non-priced round, so they're not getting equity yet, but those what they put in will convert into equity when we do our first price round with a venture capital firm, probably Q1, Q2 of next year. So we're basically taking everything that we've done, all of our resources, all of our curriculum, all the frameworks, all the models, even workshops and tools that we've kind of manually built out, and all the research that we've done working closely with all these different organizations, and we're building software around all of it. So essentially, it's performance management software, really focused on learning and development, talent development, and employee engagement and retention. So taking the two biggest differentiators are heavy on the learning and development. Still, platforms out there that focus on surveys or they focus on employee engagement, they still stay away from the number one thing. The number one thing that always is in the top three of how you keep employees engaged and retained. One of those things is always learning and development, investing in their growth. That's what I love about taking our, a page out of the book of special operations. If nothing else, we're a learning organization. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Tano, but we spend probably 90% of our time training and learning and training in pro dev. Pro dev is a thing. A lot of organizations out there, they say they believe in it, but the ones that get it invest heavily in professional development, and even personal development. The ones that don't never scale to the level of the organizations that invest back in their people.
True. Very true.
And so we've built some unique differentiators. AI, to your point earlier, Ian, it already can't be your main unique differentiator. It should be a given in software today, but how you use it and how it supports your other key unique differentiators and value proposition is unique and is proprietary to you. So we're on a path to, we're building our beta and we're launching in October. We've already got, we're not a complete new company. So we've got clients who are going right onto the platform right out of the gate. So we'll start showing revenue immediately, and that's what venture capital firms want to see. They want to see the platform up, they want to see it live, they want to see customers in it, and certain degrees of revenue flowing through the platform. It depends on how much, depending on who you're talking to, and what kind of track record you have. So that's where we're at, man. So it's, but again, I think the lesson there that kind of ties back to everything we've been talking about around leadership and adaptability and things that we can take from our time in the military really is just that: looking at an opportunity and ensuring that you do enough research so you can take some calculated risk, but then pivoting or adapting down to a path that you think might be more sustainable, regardless of how hard you think it's going to be, regardless of the pain that's inevitably going to come with that. As we all know, the outcome and the upside has the greatest potential to be much better than what you're doing, in that moment. So it's those are my biggest takeaways, I think, from the military, is just a growth mindset and the ability to adapt without, completely losing your mind. I think stress management is something that, again, it's a constant journey, but having the ability to do these more radical pivots and adaptations without completely letting the obstacles debilitate you, I think is something that all servicemen and women bring from their time in the military, combat or not, that can be really powerful if well capitalized on.
And we don't generally see it because we just see it as everyday activities. You really have to step back and be, okay, this is okay. I get it now. Where it was just you do it and you embrace the suck and you get it done, and it just becomes the normalcy of everyday life. But it is something special. And you're right. Every veteran, every military has that ability to do it. It's just sad that some forget when they get out because nobody's pushing them to do it, and now it becomes self-starting. But now that's, dude, amazing. And I wish, again, I hope one day we do cross paths and you can shame me because I will have a drink. It's okay. I'm going to have one. You don't have to have any, but
Ian and I will quietly judge you. We won't
you guys
verbalize
can
it. You'll see it written on our faces, and then we'll text you early in the morning, be like, "How you feeling, buddy? Feeling good? I just finished my 4 a.m. workout. But how are you doing?" Now, knowing you, you'll do your workout either way. It's just...
That is true. That is true.
Like this, I have to admit I can't do it like I used to, man. My one drink and I'm good. I'm old and I'm good. But gosh, I remember those days where I could drink and still go run 5 miles in like 25 minutes and then come back and drink a little more and then puke my guts out and then go. What the hell? How did we do that?
I just was mind blown when I first got to the team, and some of these guys were like old school, like we'd be doing 18 hours of land warfare in fucking Arkansas, and then we'd clean weapons, put everything away, Fort Chaffee, and they'd still go out at midnight and hit the bars till like 3 and get up at 5:30 and do it again. I'm like, are you a cyborg? Like what?
I know how, but we're paying for it now, so it's all right. But wonderful, and I'm glad you talk about you've delved a little bit, but I'm happy that you talked about the kids and the importance of being present. That's huge today, to being present for our children, for those of us that weren't, and now look back, and if I have any regrets at all, it's. And I don't know if I want to call it a regret, but it's something like, man, I wish I could have had my cake and eat it too. I wish I could have deployed and still been around for my daughters who's 15 now, my son who's 19. I wish I could have been around them first 10 years of their life. But, we make choices. God blessed me with a younger guy, so I'm home for my 9-year-old. But it's just one of those things, man. But I'm glad you touched on it.
You still have those times, and you've seen it, I've seen it, so many friends that have seen it, where they make up for that time. You're not going to change the past, but pouring your soul into your kids now and really building or rebuilding those relationships is, and you do that in a way that kind of makes the past irrelevant. So
it does. It does. And I have to let that go. And I'm just glad you said it. And my 9-year-old boy wishes I wouldn't, because now I still treat him like he's 6. I give him hugs and kisses all the time. He's 19. So
I'm the same way, dude. I've got 4 kids, all up from 18 down to 3. I'm going to be going to flag football games for like the rest of my life.
You're gonna be like me. You're gonna be a grandpa dad. Like that's
they're like, oh, your grandpa's here. Like, no, that's my father. That's my dad.
Oh wait, well, God bless you, bro. It was awesome talking to you. Seriously, our paths will cross.
Yeah, let's make sure we all exchange contact info and stuff, because we definitely love to do this in person, or just not on the podcast necessarily, but just get together, hang out, man.
Absolutely, man. And for the audience, I just want to once again stress, pick up Taking Point and Embrace the Suck, both books, at Brent_Gleeson on Instagram, and then at just accelerate.ai, but that's spelled EXCELR8.ai. And this is a long time coming, man, but really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
For the audience, be sure to, any comments you have, leave them on the video or any reviews wherever you're listening. We're also now on the SiriusXM app, which is pretty cool. Always appreciate the support from you guys. Thanks.
That's all for this episode of Battle Line Podcast. But we're always posting new content on social media. Follow us on Instagram at Battleline Podcast and on Twitter at Battleline Pod. That's an order. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes up every Tuesday. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. Believe in yourself. Face all challenges head on. And as always, never quit.